are you good?
Yeah, let's get you up here quickly. If you can do the virtual cam, I think.
Oh, yeah. There we go. Oh, wrong one. Apparently, it's not recording that. That's interesting. All right, you should probably be able to see me now. Yeah or nay?
Um, no.
Oh wow, it just doesn't like me.
Do you have the
All right,
virtual cam going on? Oh, I think it's connecting.
it tends to be special,
Yeah.
from time to time. All right, don't worry, chat. You're gonna be able to see Rex in a bit. I'm just trying to get the best version of Rex. Give me a second. That's probably a better version of Rex. Let me get the better version of Rex. There we go. Hey, better version of Rex.
Woohoo! Got it. We're fixed. Okay, you're still not showing up for me.
I'm still not showing up for you. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Um,
Oh, there
how
you
about
go.
now?
Yep, that worked. Whatever you just did.
All right, perfect. Give me a second though.
Look at us trying to get things together as we're streaming, as always.
As, as always, you already know we tend to do this like last second in the best
Mm-hmm.
parts. All right, chat. Let me know if you guys can hear her. Say something, Rex. Just trying to make sure
Hi,
that
how's it
everything's
going, y'all?
Rex squared. Is there an echo? Rex is Dublin.
Am I
Oh, you're
doubling it?
Dublin.
Oh no.
All right, that should have fixed it. I think.
Hello? Yeah, let's see if that chat let us know.
Yeah, chat. Let us know. Please tell me if there's no more echo. I hope there's no more echo. Rex still echoes. I hope not. I hope not. Fingers crossed. Better. All right, better. There we go. All right, Rex. So you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm good to go.
All right, Rex. Well, we're essentially starting off a new series on YouTube, literally interviewing some like the coolest individuals on the platform, creators, especially like yourself and others. And I guess first off, is you want to introduce yourself?
Oh God. Yeah. Hi, I'm Rex73 here on Twitch, and I do political content and social commentary, and then a lot of law and legal analysis.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much my channel. I don't, I don't know what else to say about myself. I stream out here.
So, so what got you into like doing the legal analysis and stuff?
I've always been a big like law person. I'm doing like my degree in criminology and I'm doing a legal studies certificate. I've always liked legal theory and studying law and watching criminal cases, all that type of stuff. And I love the nitty gritty like um, analysis. And so part of me wants to become a lawyer at some point, but I don't know if I'm there yet just because it's a lot more schooling for me. Um,
Sure.
but it was one of those things. I think I was always like, um, I don't know. It was always really interesting to me to like see people argue over stuff, and I love arguing. So maybe it was always that type of thing of like seeing people kind of go back and forth and like try to prove their case, like, and then also like the interpretations of law has always been interesting. Like how, when you're growing up, you always see law as like this very like strict thing, like this is allowed, this isn't allowed, this is allowed, and I think as you get older, you start to like engage with law in a very or you can engage with law in a very different way because you start to understand like the nuances of how things are interpreted and that
Right.
law isn't as strict as like we're led to believe growing up. And I think that's always an interesting um, that yeah, I don't know. I like looking at stuff like that.
So with that, I guess because you get to go and like argue and you get to do all of this, and I guess always come up because essentially every single time that you come on stream, you're talking about something that's really, really important, arguing with your fellow chatters in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
Or so like, does it help you sharpen your skills when you're doing this like live, like weekly or bi-weekly or however often you do it, or how
Yeah.
does like Twitch help you or platform?
100%. I think it's like one of those things. There's always things that I like. I think about everything that I believe pretty deeply, and I try to think
Mm.
about the things that like I believe in and that I'm passionate about a lot. But getting on
Mhm.
Twitch, it was one thing to like have those conversations kind of with myself or with friends and all that type of stuff and like debate those things out. Whereas like when you're interacting with like a whole new group of people who are like so willing to push back on whatever you believe or whatever you say, um, I think you are even forced to engage with your own ideas like way more. So now it's like there's probably things that like ever since I've been on Twitch, I've become like way sharper at handling those discussions compared to what I would have been before.
Sure. And You know what? I think we're gonna start stepping into some minefield here, right? Masters put in the Psychologist podcast. We have the right wing Hassan loving Rex.
Yeah.
Uh, which, if for those of you guys on YouTube, Rex and I actually known each other for a long time now, a couple of months, yeah, like more than a couple of
More than a
months at this
couple of
point.
months. I think it's been like 8 months, honey.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we're closing in on the year.
Yeah, it's been a while because
um,
you found my stream pretty early on into like my streaming career.
yeah, that's why I'm like, it's been close to a year. That's what a okay. But with that, I guess my thing is, are there some streamers or some commentators that you just can't stand, and what is it about them that like repels you?
Um, as much as I'm opposed to a lot of chat things, I am like
Mm,
relatively left wing. I definitely fall pretty far left of the center. But I think like a lot of my issues, I don't take issues with a lot of right wingers because it's not like they're not the people who are on my side trying to prove like the things that like that I see, like claim to fight for. And so I take a lot of issues with leftists who are uncritical in their engagement with like leftist ideas. And I think that's something that really bugs me. So people like Hassan's really good at repeating talking points, but I don't know how much he like actually engages with the things sorry, my throat is dry. Engages with the things he's saying or thinks. And I think that's like my problem with a lot of like people like content creators in the political space is just like the limited capacity to engage with stuff that's going on in the world and the things that they claim to believe. I think a really good example of this is like, especially when it comes down to like race issues and stuff, and like we start like, I know one of the big things that bothered me, like when I was kind of getting more into like my political arc, and something that really triggered me was like when people would say like, oh, minorities can't be racist, like only white people can be racist, and it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm in an academic field where we talk about like systemic racism versus like regular type of racism and like interpersonal racism, all these type of things, and I'm like, people co-opted, and people did it without even realizing it, but people co-opted a very academic definition of systemic racism to just be all racism, and it became like the broad narrative online was like minorities can't be racist. And I remember that was like one of those things that I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because I thought people who I aligned with were smarter than that, and I realized that a lot of people who espouse the same ideas that I did were actually not as smart as I thought they were. And I think that was like and that sounds very demeaning, and I don't mean to be, but I kind of do mean
well,
to be because I'm like, it just feels like, yeah.
let's talk about that because you just hit on a fucking major point. This is why I love having conversations with you because we can literally just like keep hitting gold mines along the way, which is like, I guess intercultural racism, right?
Mm.
And I'll be honest, I think it's huge.
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's I think it's absolutely huge. I can speak at least like from the Latin perspective in my side. You still hear a lot of derogatory terms being used as nicknames, and a lot of like stereotypes still being thrown out there and being assumed as normality.
Hmm.
But yet, like apparently, like minorities can't be racist towards one another. Hard doubt.
There's like so much unintentional racism from like, especially like if you're like a either first generation kind of person, like my parents are both very like open, pretty liberal people, but my family on my mom's side has been here for a long time, and my dad grew up in a very unconventional household, so it was one of those things where I grew up in a very like open and accepting household, but like I start to go out to like the broader parts of my family, like my extended family, and you still see a lot of those traditional ideas, and it's one of those things where, oh god, I'll tell a story. This is how you know
Sure.
like our communities are like some of the most racist, right? My one aunt came home with a Muslim guy, and
Uh-huh.
my great grandma was still alive at the time, and so everyone else was kind of like, okay, like a Muslim guy. It was one of those things that was a little off-putting, and my aunt introduced him to my great grandma, and my great grandma
Uh-huh.
yelled at her and said, if you were going to date outside the race, why couldn't you be like your other, like one of my other aunts, and date a white guy instead of a Muslim guy? And it was like,
Wow.
oh my god, like there's tiered levels, right? It was like one of those things where it's like, okay, we'll accept the white guy, but like anything past, no. I was like,
It's like
they're
it's
like, we
either in
settled
the
with that one, okay?
community. It's like it's either in the community, it's in the culture, or it's white. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it's wrong.
it
Right?
was,
Wow.
but it's like we're brown, like we're Indian. It's not like we're so far out. Like you would think that like our culture would be more accepting of like Muslim. Obviously, there's a lot of like geopolitical reasons why that divide exists, but you would think that like racism always stems from like this like difference in people, like right, like oh, you can look at skin color, you can look at the way they look, the way they act. But like theoretically, like Muslims and Indians, like our cultures are almost the exact same. We all look the same. Like we're all in the same group, but like the racism there is so intense between those two groups. And yes, I know Muslim isn't a race, okay? Don't no one say it, but we treat Muslim people like a race, okay? When we talk about these issues in general, we like, yeah.
So let me touch your brain on something a little bit, which is like the overgeneralization that I've seen a lot of political commentators from all sides go ahead and use.
Mm-hmm.
Especially certain top streamers will go ahead and automatically assume or generalize the concept onto everyone in a way that, like, one, doesn't explain the core concept, and number two, makes it seem like it's black or white, like it's all or nothing thinking. We're either gonna accept extremism in one aspect,
Mm-hmm.
or you're on the wrong side of history, or you're
Yeah.
bad. Like, how does that work for you? Like hearing like these sort of conversations happening.
That's definitely something that's super bothered me, and it's become even worse lately. And the problem is it fractures your actual movement really, really hard. So like for a leftist, like despite that I'm like way closer to most like far leftist on like most of our political positions, they'll probably hate me more than they hate someone who's far right because you're
Mm-hmm.
not left enough for the community and you're not good enough. You don't believe the right things enough. And I think it's called like usually purity testing of like
Right.
how virtuous are you, like how good are your leftist morals and stuff like that. But like again, even if you can substantiate why you're not fully on board with an idea or why you don't fully like back a certain like movement in your ideology, it's still not good enough because a lot of people will just automatically buy into like whatever the furthest like left, whatever the new political thing is, right? Like there's a lot of content Twitch creators who like as soon as a new idea comes out they will stand behind it 100%, and anything you say against it, it's like, oh, you're all of a sudden like, yeah, you're one of the fascists, like, oh, you're just now a conservative because you're not progressive enough for the movement, so now you're a conservative also, because you're just trying to conserve one specific ideal. And I know like this happens especially with like again like, and there's certain movements that it's like much worse with, and I think like in like being in the LGBT community it was like one of those things where I'm like, I don't feel gay enough to be in the community most of the time, or like I don't feel like I hold the right views enough to like be in the community, and that was a super weird thing to grow up with.
Mm. So it's like you don't really fit in.
Yeah.
Is essentially what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So but at that point, it's like, for example, how gay, how bisexual do you have to be to fit in, right? Like,
Hmm.
where are people drawing the lines, and why?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big one that's happening right now with is like we saw like the gay and lesbian communities fractures back in like the 2010s to 2015s, but right now
Uh-huh.
it feels like it's happening more in the trans community. Like you see like it go through stages with different groups of people within a movement, but right now like the trans community is fracturing really hard because you have people. Oh, thank you for following. Anyway,
I sweet Rome. Yeah.
there's oh god, what was I saying? Oh yeah, there's like fracturings within the community when like certain parts of the community are like, I don't know if this is the right way to go, and then other parts of the community are pushing really hard. So like I see it with the trans community right now of some people like, I don't know how to say it, like traditional trans people or like versus like um you have like non-binary people, and it's like sometimes the experience between these two types of people is very, very different, and we want to branch it all under one community, and I think that's like caused some really like big issues within the community because it's like, yeah, we technically have a similar experience, but the experience that one group has to deal with is very far off from what the other group has to deal with. And I think that's like what a lot of these things god I think that's what a lot of these things come down to.
Well, because I was about to say, just listening to all of this, it's like what I'm hearing is essentially a divide between new and old. Different experiences are sort of what's determining where that line is, and does that? Because for me, as a therapist looking in, what that's for me, that's like a lot of anxiety that's essentially going to be present in a lot of kids. Because where do you fit in a line where people are telling you what you are and are not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of allowing people to go ahead and like identify with whatever, right? But if there's like a hard predicament in situations like this, because for example, I've had some therapy sessions where people are like, exactly that. Like, I don't feel like I belong to the LGBTQ community because I'm not gay enough. Or I
Mm-hmm.
go to a bar, a gay bar, and all of a sudden they're like, what are you doing here? You're straight. And it's like, no, it's like, where's that line? Where are people okay and not okay in doing that? And how do you define experience versus openness and allowing people in?
Mm-hmm. Oh geez, that's like a super hard
Yeah,
question because it's hard to draw any hard lines because like it's like one of those. What is it? Have you ever heard of something called Loki's wager?
I have not. You mind explaining it to me?
Okay, so Loki's wager is this idea of like, it doesn't perfectly apply here, but it does somewhat apply. But it's this idea that if you can't, so like I think the story goes like it's an old like folk tale or whatever. But Loki like makes a deal with some like I don't know demons or whatever, and he loses this bet, and the bet was for his head, and he said to them, he's
Uh-huh.
like, well, okay, that's fine, you can have my head, but you can't take a single inch of my neck, right? And the
Uh-huh.
whole idea is like, well, how do you determine the neck from the head? And like the people who he bet against couldn't actually figure out where his neck and head were, so they didn't end up taking his head because you can't actually draw a hard line. So like there's things on the extreme ends where we can like kind of decide like, oh, this is really easy to like understand because like there's like a far there's things that are like obviously head and obviously neck, but when you start to get into those like narrow, finer details, you're like, so where is the head and where's the neck, right? When you try to find that divide, it becomes really hard.
Well, yeah, I think division is hard. And one topic I kind of wanted to ask you on, because I was about to say, we've had various topics. We talk about a lot, especially when Brady and everyone. But one of the big topics that I wanted to touch you on was like specifically, I guess, content creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's sort of the field that we're in. And for you, what is, I guess, how do you see toxicity in terms of boundaries between content creators and their communities? Or have you had the chance to experience anything like that?
Uh, I haven't, but I think I set really hard boundaries um with my community of like telling them like I'm not your friend. I'm here to like I like do educational content. I do interesting stuff, but I'm like not here to be your friend. I'm not gonna like. I think something that bugs me a little bit sometimes is
Mm.
I was thinking about this earlier of like how much do we play as like content creators into parasocial relationships that we build, and I try to be really
Sure.
conscious of not building parasocial relationships and making it very clear that like I am a streamer who's here to entertain and educate. I am nothing more to you than that, and I hate all of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of like I joke like that to tell my like, and it's like you don't have to tell your fans that you hate them, but it's like one of those things where you should be like very very clear with those boundaries, and I don't think a lot of streamers are, but a lot of streamers also make their money off that, right? Like when we talk about hot
Yeah.
streamers or like people who are especially in the just chatting section, their profit and their community thrives off of like building parasocial relationships, and I think that's like kind of part of the problem is like we've built a system where like that's actually people's like means of money making is building those parasocial relationships because that's what people come back for is to continue talking to these streamers and building on that relationship, whereas like I don't like that because I think, but I also, part of me is also like, well, if you're stupid enough to get on Twitch and like start talking to a Twitch streamer and think that you're actually friends, and you're also kind of stupid. Like you're too stupid to be on the internet at that point. So it's hard because there's a responsibility on the streamer, but there's also responsibility of individuals not to like. It's 2022. The internet has now been around long enough that I feel like everyone should be a little bit more educated on how to like act on the internet. Like back in like
Hmm.
2010, we all did stupid things. Like I don't remember like I don't know if you guys had Kick in the States, but Kick was like this like basically like chat room like Omegle, but it was just a chat room where you could chat with random people. We had Omegle and all this
Right.
type of stuff. Like there's all this like crazy shit. And back then, like the education on the like internet safety and culture and how to behave on the internet was not the same. And now it's all of a sudden like, okay, we should know better than to like watch a Twitch streamer and say like that's my friend. It's like, no, it's not. Like you should know better. As much as they're
Well,
playing on that parasociality, so are you.
let me go ahead and dive further into this, right? Because Brady and I we've been watching a lot of creators, YouTubers, Twitch, whatnot, and that's something that we've noticed, right? What it seems as though a lot of people are capitalizing on the parasociality aspect to try and drive monetization,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess this comes the thing is where do you stand where all of a sudden say as a content creator, a YouTuber, Twitch streamer, or whatever, you're putting it all on the say chat, the community, where all of a sudden you're like, I can't eat this month without you. I can't do this without you. I need you to do this.
Oh,
So on
that
and so
shit's
forth.
fucked. Cause like at that point, it's like if you're not making enough doing content creation to sustain yourself, you shouldn't be doing content creation as your job. Like you can't put that on
Mm.
other people and like make people feel bad for not being able to support you when they watch your channel, because like these things are entertainment, and it's cool when you can turn entertainment into monetization.
Profit.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but like if you're not profiting enough to sustain yourself, that's like, I think it's the same thing when like people run businesses and like um weirdly enough, this is happening with like the Canadian housing market right now, where there's a lot of this is gonna be a really weird analogy. There's a lot of people who bought second properties and were renting them out for really like good profits. And you know, when you rent houses, that's a business. You are running that as a business of renting properties. Well, now like
Right.
our market is one sec,
Ooh,
one sec.
sounds good. All right, guys. Chat, guys, start preparing your questions for Rex for whenever we come back. Any hot questions, hot takes for either of us are gonna go live for YouTube, which they'll be able to go
We're
and see.
getting like phantom knocking on my room because there was no one there.
Oof. Anyway,
Swear to God, I'm hearing things. Okay.
you're scaring me now, dude. It's
Yeah.
like the ghost that threw something
Oh,
at me.
you have no idea. There was actually a ghost that used to live in my room, but that's a story for another day. She used to throw things at people when they walked in.
Oh, yo.
Yeah. Oh God, what was I saying? What were we on?
Bro, you literally just hit something. My mind went blank the moment you like put like the screen down. But we were
Oh,
talking about like creators that use their put it on the community in order to go ahead and like stay alive essentially.
oh yeah, no. Then like it's one of those things like, oh, sorry, I was making the analogy to the rental properties. So yeah, there's all these people who
Yeah.
are now mad like that their properties aren't doing well and that they're not generating the same, and they're like, you know, they're on the hook for like a mortgage on a second house that they can't afford, but like no one's renting it because people also can't afford rent. And so these people are all like, you know, up in arms against the government for like, oh, like, you know, like, look, we've been screwed over and stuff. And it's like, no, you took a risk by starting a business of rental properties, and now you didn't plan ahead for like something potentially going wrong. You just assumed you were going to continue to make money on it. But like if you're not a, you know, if you're running it as a business, you also are taking on the risk of a business. And it's kind of the same thing with like doing content creation. You are running and self-sustaining a business for yourself, and if that business is not enough to support you, you have to be doing something on the side to support you. Like this isn't charity work. Like this isn't a GoFundMe. This is something that you have to work to like make money off of.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
yeah.
so I mean, not prepping for the future I think is huge. And I think as content creators and as individuals, there's like a weird sense where people aren't keeping others like because there's no accountability essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one thing where I'm sort of reaching out on, which is if your mental health and your baseline security is completely dependent on your chat, maybe it's time for you to seek some like mental health
Mm-hmm.
therapy or like some mental health. The reason being is because more and more channels, and this is one of the big things that you know we were talking about, is quite literally doing this where everything's being monetized. Say, oh, you want to join the Discord? It's gonna be like $5 to join the Discord. All right,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, dude. I don't really care if you monetize or don't monetize your Discord or other avenues out there, Patreon, whatever. But the moment that I'm like over here, and I'm like, you know what? Rex, my opportunity to eat or my opportunity to pay the bills this month comes down to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure to a lot of people who might not be well,
And
you know?
especially
And
if you've built those parasocial aspects with your community, like you could be super manipulative, right? Like, like if you have like that connection with your community in the sense that like they are like, you know, very connected to you, and that they feel like personally hurt by like the fact that you're going through a hard time, then you can really play on those sentiments and those feelings of people to like get them to like, you know, aid you and like send you money and stuff.
right.
Which is the scary part.
I mean, it's terrifying because then after aspects like this, it's like, at what point are you? Because for me, it's already starting to go down a bad line, right? Because every single time you can cry wolf and lay it on your community, you can, granted, that may start turning people away after a while, but at the same time, if you're already stressed out and your release of stress or self-care or whatever is say coming home and trolling in the chat on Rex's chat whenever like she's going like hard about any topic, right? If that's your sense of relief and you can no longer have that relief because all of a sudden Rex depends on you, Rex needs money for food or else she's not going to be able to eat or so on and so forth, are you even going to be comfortable coming back in and like having an openness or having that conversation with that content creator?
Um,
It depends on the parasociality that you've built, right? The
yeah,
rapport that you've built, so on and so forth.
because some people are going to be really turned off by it, and then other people are going to be like really pulled in by it, and that's like you might end up like you'd be taking a huge risk splitting your community like that. But I think the people who, like you're saying, people who actually do play on those sentiments in their community.
Yeah, people who continuously play on those sentiments for the
Yeah.
community.
I think people who do that, I think they know that their community has that like engagement with them and that they have like kind of that hold over all of these people that they know they can do it without splitting off. Because like the first couple of times you do it, you'll split off like the group of people who um don't follow like that won't what's it called? Like vibe with that sentiment and they'll throw it off really quick. But anyone who stays through the first couple, like that streamer now knows that they can get away with continuing to do this.
Sure. So have
Um,
you seen any other major like incidents or any other major stuff that you've seen happen content creation wise, anything that you want to go into before we because there's already a question in here for us. So anything that you want to touch on?
um, I think from the content creator side versus the instead of talking about like the chat side, there
Hmm.
is I find one issue I have is especially in the politics sphere, um, the expectation of graciousness from people online, and I think my issue is like a lot of people get really angry when people disagree or people send hate or people send even harassment to an extent. Which these are things that shouldn't happen. Well, like obviously disagreements are going to happen, but a lot of people take first of all people take disagreement as harassment these days. So that's one issue. But I think a lot of people aren't ready for like the internet culture and people expect the internet to be better for them instead of expecting the internet to be what it is and going in with the mindset of like the internet is what it is and you have to take it as it is. So for me it's like I went onto the into this politics sphere and like starting to do like political content knowing that I'm probably getting into a lot of heated conversations. There's probably going to be a lot of people who send me hate, probably going to be a lot of like negative back and forth, but I was going into the sphere ready for that mentality and knowing that that could be a very possible outcome. And I took the internet where it is. But I think a lot of people come in and like as soon as they get pushback or hate or harassment sent to them, it sucks. But it's also something that you should know happens. Again, this is like I talked about it earlier. Is like you know what the internet culture is by now. It's 2022. We've all been on the internet for 10 plus years. We know what the internet's like, and you know how easy it is for people to just become very vitriolic and terrible. And it's not good.
Right.
It shouldn't happen. We should try to change it, but you also can't expect it to change.
Right. Well, my thing is listening to all of this. It's like, for example, and I always like to put it out. Your community, YouTube, internet in general. Yo, you put something out. There's always gonna be those people that like, for some reason, watch all of your content, but fucking hate you,
Yeah.
right? Or they're gonna troll you in the best ways possible,
Yep.
and you just gotta be open to it. You just gotta
Yeah.
be open to like whatever's thrown at you. Because this is one of the biggest things that I'll throw out there, right? And I guess this isn't a funny experience. Rather well said that like my community sort of laughs at, or like the mods and whatnot laugh at, which is no matter what type of video I put up or whatnot, there's always individuals going in there and being like, why can't you do this? Wait, like there's always like shit commentators and all of this stuff. And it's like, yeah, dude, we're doing this live. We're not doing this edited, you know?
Hmm.
Like it's quite a big difference. Like, and some people just like, I don't know, you just gotta take the shit comments as shit comments and
Hmm.
move on. Like not everyone's gonna agree with your point. Not everyone's gonna agree with everything through that. But I kind of want to transition this into one thing in particular, which is how do you think about people, say, who pay into subscribe or tier three subscribers and all of these people who want to go ahead and start suggesting differences in your content? Like, how do you,
You can suggest them, but it doesn't mean I have to take them. I'm like, at the end of the day, you chose to put your money there. I didn't ask, like, well, obviously I don't ask, I'm not someone who asks for donations or asks people to subscribe. It's nice when you guys do. I really appreciate it. But it's also not this thing that, like, I push out to people. I usually tell people to join my Discord because I like having these conversations. And that's usually the most I ask out of people. But for me, it's like if you choose to like subscribe and support my content, I assume you're subscribing because you want to support me continuing to do this content because you're enjoying the
Mhm.
content I do. But like if you throw money at me, I'm not gonna like dance like a puppet, right? Like that's not what I'm here to do.
Right?
And I don't, yeah, there's like that expectation of if I give you money, then you have to do what I say. But it's like, bro, you're not my employer. You're someone who's donating to the cause. Okay.
No, and I think that's actually a very clear distinction there to go ahead and make out there. Just because you subscribe, just because you donate, whatever, does not mean that you get to go ahead and change the stream to however you want it to change. Ultimately, it comes down to the content creator to go ahead and pick. You good?
Yeah. 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 Sorry, I was just looking at something.
All right,
Um,
I got a question from Masters though.
mhm.
What do you think the postmodern sense of identity in the LGBT community is? Like social constructive terms? How do gender, race terms that identify identity? Should they be more fluid and ever changing, or should they be strict? I guess is what he's going for.
Um, shit. This is, I've gone back and forth in my head a lot on this because part of me is like a lot of this is constructed by humans. A lot of our labels, like the way we look at things, the way we view gender, identity, race, all these things are very constructed, at least the categories for them, right? But at the
Hmm.
same time, the underlying things that we use to create these categories are real things. And I think that's the part that people always forget. Everything is socially constructed. The idea of a table or a chair is, these are going to be, we're going to get into some deep philosophy here, or not like mild
Sure.
philosophy. The idea of like a table or a chair or, anything that we create is a social construct by like, even the idea of an animal, it's a social construct because we construct it using like our own definitions. However, it doesn't
Mm.
mean that the underlying things that we use to create that social category don't exist. When we look at something that's an animal, we think of like something that's living, something that has a heartbeat, something that sustains itself, like all of these type of things. So there is some underlying fact to like these categories. And I think it's like the same thing with like race, gender, and sex is like these are things that we've decided what the limits of those categories are, but there is some underlying factor. So it's not that like these things don't need to be strict as they used to be. But I think I don't know if I necessarily agree with like a lot of the abolition, like gender abolition stuff, or because I think there is some like utility to having gender or at least sex categories.
Right.
Sex categories for sure, obviously, but even gender categories, I think because it's one of those things where it's like I maybe it's an appeal to the majority kind of thing, but like when 98% of the world is comfortable within a certain level of categorization, I don't know if you change entire definitions to fit the 2%. I think you can broaden definitions to include that 2%, but I don't think you need to completely change or abolish the definition to include the 2%. Um,
Right.
and I've always been one of those people. I think like even I'm always the type of person who's like, as long as things aren't negatively impacting me, then I don't care if they're just not impacting me. Like I came out as bi very early in my life, and it was one of those things where I was like, I don't really care if people like dislike my lifestyle or don't agree with me being bisexual. That's totally fine. But as long as you're not advocating to government to like take away rights of gay people, I'm pretty much okay. Like you can personally hate me. I don't super care. I think it's the same thing like in that sense of like I'm very like relaxed with like how I approach these type of things of like don't create things that harm people, but if like things are, you know, um oh god, I'm rambling at this point. Yeah, cut me off. Okay.
No, you're good.
If that makes
You're
sense. I feel
fine.
like I'm making sense at that point.
So my thing is the only thing that's constant is change, right? So the times will always be like constantly changing what we define certain aspects as, right? So our our tongues are by that I mean our language, the way that we view certain things as right or wrong. And I don't mean to like go all dramatic about it, but even like heroes and villains, it's the basic concept of that. One moment you can see a hero as as like wow, absolute genius, the next moment, they're an absolute evil lord that's controlling Twitter, apparently, according to some people. You have a lot of like changes, and the times allow those changes to happen. I think being open to fluidity is of course important, but at the same time, having those key structural components, because we have to, for example, we don't got to go that far, but Latinx, right? The whole term of like Latinx, I'm bringing this up just because it makes sense. Um, that's mostly an American thing,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know. A lot of people in Mexico, Latin America, do not go by that. Majority of Latin speakers do not go by that. However, if that is a term that people wish to identify as, that's a term that people wish to identify as. Whatever, dude. But that does not have to go ahead and apply to the vast majority of people who aren't there yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because all of a sudden, if you start doing that, what does that start causing? A lot of panic, right? It starts causing a lot of people who or like, wait a minute, like a lot of revolt against something that they're not ready for. And I think this is sort of like relates back to the extremisms of like taking an extreme decision like to the left or to the right,
Hmm.
when most of the crowd is in the middle. You're probably going to get a lot of people who aren't satisfied into going into these extreme actions.
I think there's like, yeah, there's two kind of broad things here that like this touches on. One, I think
Mm.
we're getting into a space intercultural, or sorry, interculture, where we're starting to decide, we make like our broad narrative based on a very small group of people. So when it comes to like race issues and stuff, right? Like there's a lot of division in the community, like in, minority communities about how to approach race issues, but we've taken one very far left narrative and like made that the main stage narrative of like how to deal with race issues. And I think that's a
Sure.
part of the problem, is like we're placating a lot of our narrative to a very small group, a very loud small group of people. um at least on the, like, yeah, on the extreme ends, like I remember one of the biggest times I saw like an example of this was like the abolish the police movement. Most minority communities did not agree with like the abolish the police thing, but that became a very, very prevalent like narrative online for some reason that took over. And there was something else I was going to say, and now I can't remember what it was, so we'll stick there.
So, yeah, well, we got another question from Masters. Where in the spectrum do you think you are, even on the left? How would you label yourself? And how would you define yourself politically?
um Social Democrat probably is like the closest, because I'm pretty, it's so hard because I fall so many different ways on different things. I believe in like strong, like, social safety nets and taking care of like people who are in bad situations. But I also am for limited government involvement in like a lot of places in my life. Like I think for the most part, like
Mhm.
people should be able to like live the way they want and do what they want as long as it's not hurting others. So like I'm fine paying taxes, but I also don't want to be like limited by like major, government overreach with like what you can and can't do. It's kind of it, like I this is, I think, something I'm still figuring out, because I used to say I was much more libertarian throughout high school, and then I was probably pretty social democrat like a year ago, but it's so hard to kind of like pin yourself down. And I think that's the other problem, is like we've gotten so much into having to label everything. And I think that's also not a super fun thing, because you feel like you have to put yourself in one category. And if you say something outside that category, everyone's like, well, so you're not a real social democrat, or you're not a real libertarian. It's like, well, no, I have some of those values, but I don't hold every single value from that community, right? Like it's just, yeah, I think this is something like I can't give you a strong answer on, just because I don't know where I fall right now fully. Social democrat would probably be the closest, with some
Mhm.
libertarian backing.
Oh no. Uh, well, I think that's one of the biggest aspects. It's like having, because no matter what opinions you have, you'll never directly fall in one category
Yeah.
100%. And then people will always use that as an argument as to why you're not that. Oh, you can't be a social democrat if you're thinking like as a libertarian. Oh,
Hmm.
you can't be a libertarian if you're thinking about like taking care of others. It's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Sagusu says, I think we're all on the spectrum here. Sagusu, my friend.
Damn,
Oh
it's kind
no.
of true.
Kind of true. Honestly, psychologically, I want a system that works best for everyone. Like I'm not even gonna lie to you. Mental health is such a fucking joke when it comes to how funded it is, or if it is funded, how those that gets distributed to people. If people actually like took a look as to like how it goes into operations, or how much money is being put into um mental health aspects, you'd kind of be shocked as to how some places are still open.
Hmm.
And even through that, you also have a big separation where mental health clinics are still only being operated for the most part. Like, don't get me wrong, they're in lower income communities as well, but for the most part, you'll have them all over higher income areas, middle to higher income areas. The low income areas still have a lot of stigma. They still have a lot of like, um, because it's not taught, because it's still very culturally based. There's still a lot of like stigma around getting help. So
Yeah.
hearing stuff like that, all of a sudden, like being a psychologist, it's like, wait a minute, there needs to be more support. There needs to be higher, mental health clinics set up, more professionals that are actually getting paid what they're worth. Because yeah, it can be a little rough. So I'm all for healthcare and actually getting yourself checked up and making sure that you're a okay with that.
Hmm.
Oof.
That's the hard thing, because it's like, it's the balance of like allowing for options and then allowing people to have full access, because like I think this is like one of the big medical care questions of like, do you do like a fully socialized healthcare, or do you do something that's like fully privatized? So you look at like places in Europe and they have like fully, actually I don't know which places in Europe have full like socialized healthcare, versus America where everything is privatized. And I think something in the middle is good, because like you need to be allow people to like kind of have decisions and options of where they want to like go. So like you always have a baseline healthcare if you can't afford anything else. But if you can afford other things, then maybe the options are there. But then a lot of people will start to say like, there's a classist aspect of that, of like, if you're not, if you're not rich enough, you can't get the best care. And it's like, then you get
Right.
into weird arguments there. But I'm like, I think there's a point where you have to accept some inequality in a society and be okay with it, because I think it's like, I don't think it's ever going to be, you're never going to have a perfectly equal society. You're always going to have some disparity. And so
Sure.
that's probably something you have to accept, and then have to accept some level of like unequal outcomes based on that. And I think
Sure.
like that's probably one of the issue, another issue like I find on like my community of like leftists and stuff, of like people aren't willing to accept some hard truths of like, yeah, there's, we can fight for equality, but like you have to also be okay with like some people necessarily being, in better positions than others. I just don't think like no one should like live below the like line of like poverty, or like being in such like, especially in a place like America or Canada, no one should ever be having to be like live on the streets without food. Like that shouldn't be a standard in a first world country. But like if it's between, someone who can afford like, the best healthcare or just the baseline healthcare, maybe that's an acceptable outcome. But yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's like, you know what? At least having some form of healthcare is healthcare.
Hmm.
You know what? Because for example, I recently had a couple talks, and I actually went through a scare with my father. Uh, he works full time job, everything, but yet for his healthcare plan, it's absolutely ridiculous. He can't afford it, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Quite recently, he essentially started retaining water in his lungs and heart and all of this
Hmm.
stuff. And he went to a mental health clinic, or a clinic, and the clinic was like, "Hey, you need to go to the hospital like right now, and or whatnot." And he's like, "But I can't afford it." They're like, "Well, go to Mexico. It's one or the other." And
Hmm.
that's the hard line that they drew. It's like either go to Mexico or go to a hospital. And he's like, "But if I go to Mexico, will I even be able to come back? Like, I want to go
Oh,
to a hospital here." And it's like, yeah. So
yeah.
it can be pretty tough for people that have to make those like split choice decisions that don't have any baseline coverage, and all of a sudden it's like you're kind of fucked. If you go one way, you're going to be get an insane bill that you're probably going to have a hard time paying off,
Hmm.
right? And if you go the other way, are you sure that you're getting the appropriate amount of care, and you're even going to be able to come back from that? So
Yeah.
it's vice versa. And with that, we do have masters coming in. How do you view centrists? Like, is it that they're really divided among issues between the lines, or is it that they just haven't got their views out? Is there a difference between a centrist and a moderate?
I think most people who claim to be centrist are probably just moderates, right? Like, I think a lot
Mm,
of these people like kind of fall on like different sides for different issues, and that's usually what we consider as centrist. Like people will say like, oh, centrists are like people who can't take a hard stance on anything. It's like I for a long time considered myself a centrist until I realized I was probably left of most of the population. But it was because like some things that you fall like more left on, or like some things you fall more right on, and it's like when you can't really like claim yourself to one side or the other, you're usually labeled a centrist. And to me, that's the same thing as a moderate. Like people who are like for maybe moderate progression, but like the speed or like the way in which it's being done, they might not agree with, or they might not agree with every movement that's progressing forward. Um,
mhm.
I feel like these like all kind of ascribe to the same kind of people. I don't know if there's like a hard distinction between like a centrist and a moderate at this point.
So Rex, I gotta ask you this: if we're gonna go into like personal questions, why do you like discussing? Like, why do you like debating?
I thrive in chaos. I no,
But
I don't
why?
know. I I find being challenged and talking to people to be like the most interesting thing of like I I think I never want to get caught in a standstill of like just being so bogged down in what I believe that like I can't be moved. And I think constantly having discussion and talking to new people, and having your ideas challenged is like keeps you from ever getting there. And I grew up in that environment, right? Like my family is
Okay,
all like very, very different places on the political spectrum, and we've always grown up having like really hard and like interesting debates and discussions. Um, and so it was one of those things like I grew up in that kind of environment, and I've always enjoyed it. Um, Yeah, I don't know if there's like any super hard reason, but I also like, again, I like I said, I like chaos and I love like, going out like going at it with people. Like I'm a very combative personality and I always have for most of my life I've been like a very combative person. Like I like to kind of, shoot the shit. So
So, well, and that's exactly hi Lin Chow, streamer saying hi or individual saying hi. I was gonna say, but because being a combative person, essentially what I'm hearing is like this comes from your essentially growing up, yeah. Like that's sort of how you were able to go and like speak out in your
mhm.
house or something, like culturally
Oh,
speaking, or what?
yeah, I was I I grew up with, I don't know where it came from. I actually no, I kind of do because my mom was like that when she was younger. When she was older, not as much. But it's one of those things where I was always I was grown up to question everything. And then as I got older, I started to question my parents, and it was one of those things, you become an edgy teenager and you start to like go at it with your parents. And um but I'm not someone who backs down. Like I am very, very hard-headed, and I get that from my dad for sure because he's also hard-headed, which is why we probably like I love my dad, but like we also butt heads the most because it's like we're both like we're the same personality type. Um,
Right.
and so I am, until I get like a answer that satisfies me, I won't stop on something. I keep going until like I find an answer that is satisfying or that like makes sense. So I think for me, it's always like going at questions or like going like
Well,
analyzing the world.
well, hold on. You get an answer until you get an answer that you're satisfied with. But
Mhm.
what if you don't? Because sometimes there's situations and stuff where you're not gonna get something that completely satisfies you. So like, how do you deal with that?
That's one of those things. Is like there's things that I like think about right now that like I even said earlier. Like I was like I can't give you a hard like answer on certain things because I'm just not at that point with like my understanding of certain things. And so and I'm comfortable with like not always perfectly knowing everything, but as long as I'm always pushing to know the most that I can or be as like competent as I can.
For
Um,
sure.
or like yeah, and I don't need like one solid answer. It just needs to be like this is kind of where I lie right now because this makes the most sense in like the worldview that I have right now. But like I can be moved off things if like something makes more sense later on. So it's for me, it's always just about like I think continually analyzing the space that you exist in or the world that you exist in is like really important to me because I think it keeps you grounded in like so like especially when I started to get into like activism stuff, like most people hit that in high school. Um, your understanding of the world is so limited when you're in high school that like everything sounds good, right? Especially leftist activism sounds so good because it's all so it sounds so nice. Like it takes care of people. It's like it's very appealing to a teenage mind. But I think as you get a little older, you start to understand the world a little bit more, and like for some people, I don't think they let the world challenge that belief, and for me, it was very much like the things that I'm promoting and the world that I see are like mismatched. These are not gonna like sit together. So like for me, it was yeah, it was more about like trying to like get a comprehensive view of the world and then like matching my beliefs onto that.
Right. And that's beautiful. It's awesome that you're able to go and see that. But through that, I'm just gonna keep asking. I'm gonna keep
Go
asking
nuts.
questions. I feel like I'm getting like a whole world of Rex here, which is like, for example, hearing the fact that like you and your dad butt heads, hearing the
Mm.
fact that like you're able to go ahead and like sort of see this mismatch and try and find out where you truly are, form your
Mhm.
opinions, move positions, and all of this. How much pressure or expectations have come from your family, traditions, culture, whatever? And what have you conformed with, and what have you fought against? And what has that been
Um,
like?
a lot of the sexism in my culture. I was very, very hard headed growing up on that. I caused a lot of issues for my my parents in general, but my mom especially. Who we love each other. Like I have a really good relationship with my mom, but I also again I was a very combative like edgy teenager. And
Sure.
so in our culture, it's very normalized that the women kind of take care of the cooking and the cleaning. And it's one of those things. So when you went to house parties, the women would cook, the younger girls would set the table, and then the men would be called to eat, and the kids would be called to eat, and then the woman would eat at the end. And
Mm.
so I just got really, really pissed about all of that behavior. And I think I was like 14 or 15, and we were at a house party, and I was sitting on the couch, and my mom kind of walked over to me, and my mom's like, it was on my like other side of the family, so like my mom I think doesn't like to stir up as much shit when it's like her side of the family is like my mom's side of the family has been here since like the early 1900s. So like
Mm-hmm.
that side of my family is also very mixed and like non-traditional. So on her side of the family we can stir up shit all we want. But the other side of my family is one of those things where they're much more traditional, came over much later, a lot more later immigrants and stuff. And so my mom doesn't stir up a lot of shit, but I was totally fine stirring the shit. So my mom came over to me and she was like, "Oh, can you help set the table?" And I was like, in front of everyone, I was like, "No." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "You ask me every time. Go ask Eric. He's sitting in the other room. He never does it. Ask him." And I was like, "Otherwise, I'm not doing it." And it was like one of those things where it's like my mom was like, she looked like she was gonna kill me in that moment because I was like, it was one of those things where it's like it's like, can you just do this in private and not right now? Where like we need to. I don't want to start shit in front of people. It was just, but I was like, those are probably things that I was like very loud about growing up. Was like, I want equal treatment and I will demand it in my household.
No fair.
I've hit those points, right, where you always hit those points with your family, and like I have an older brother and stuff, so it's one of those things where it's like I saw him doing things and I got treated differently. I am going to call it out. And my parents, again, don't get me wrong, my parents are incredible parents, but like every parent falls into the trap of like, they mess up. But I was always also the kid who would call it out when I saw it. And my parents were pretty receptive to it, so it was a good relationship. But it was just, yeah, I was very vocal about my needs growing up. And I'm still very
Did you
vocal
ever?
about my needs in relationships and stuff too.
Well, sure, and we'll get into that. But did you ever get any pushback from that?
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
I was about to say, I don't expect them to just take it. And be
No,
like, "Oh,
gosh,
okay,
of course not.
yeah.
I was a 16-year-old, okay? They're not going to take bullshit from me. Uh,
Fair.
no, there was always like back and forth, right? Like it was never like it wasn't easy, especially the first few times that like there was like major headbutting. Um,
Mhm.
you're always gonna have like those moments with your parents, like, and again, most teenagers, like in an average household, obviously I'm not talking about the extremes where like you have abusive parents or anything, but in an average household, I think it's something that should be normalized that you're gonna fight with your teenager, and there's gonna be times where that just happens, and there's times where your teenager is gonna be right and your teenager is going to feel really shit if you don't acknowledge when they are right. And I think the first few times that happened, where I was so confident that I was right, and I know there was times where I wasn't, and there was times where I was, but the times where I knew I was right and like it wasn't received well, I like
Uh-huh.
lost my mind over it because I couldn't, like, in my head I couldn't, like, it was like that mismatch thing, right, of like, this is what I'm seeing in the world and this is what's happening and these aren't aligned. I don't understand. It's not making sense. And my brain would just start to implode really fast.
Oh.
And so that super sucked. But like, yeah, no, as time went on, like you get better at just like, also it was like one of those things where I got better at communicating with my parents what my needs were instead of just being very like obviously like edgy teenager about it. So
Right.
that was also the other part, was like I was able to communicate to my parents like, this is how I'm feeling and like this is why I'm feeling this. And then it was like, oh, okay, I understand. And then like you can kind of have that dialogue better. Yeah. So
But that's, I was about to say, I think that's one of the big things, like as teenagers, you're always trying to find your place, right? You're
mhm.
trying to go out and like find out where your boundaries are, what you're gonna try and strive for, especially as well, like what's gonna make your experience different than, what your parents have gone through, right? Or like trying to find like, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna be like my parents if I ever have kids. Like, not gonna go that route. I'm gonna go a
Mhm.
different route, or so on and so forth. So you standing up for yourself, that's pretty cool, dude. I think that it's like, I'm like listening to this and I'm like, that must have been an interesting experience to have like uh Sagasu asking Rex, are there any traditional values from your culture you think you still have a lot of value in?
Yeah. I think appreciation for family is something super valued in Asian cultures compared to your just other cultures in general. Like the type of relationships that you have in Asian cultures are very, very significant. And I think that's
Mhm.
something I still carry with me. Like I have a really close relationship with like a lot of family members. Like we have big families, like, but even with my extended family, like I have really, really strong relationships. And or like the idea of like, when I was growing up, my grandparents were like my mom's parents were very, very involved in raising us and taking care of us and helping out my parents. So like we never went to daycare. We were always with my grandparents. They were super involved in our life, and now as they've gotten older, like we also turn around and take care of them. So it's like one of those things where it's um I really like that aspect of my culture, of like how, I mean, it can obviously there's times where it's not good, but like I think just how much your family means and like how much you guys take care of each other is like very, yeah, it's just very big in Asian cultures.
So with that, speaking of like, I mentioned that we're gonna go into the relationship aspect, and this is something I'm curious about. how do you? Because I'm sure you butt heads with people you date. Yeah, because you already mentioned this. That like the more that you go like that, the more I'm thinking about it. How do you like? What does that like problem and resolution phase look like for you in a relationship?
um Shit, I have to be hyper aware of my hard-headedness.
Uh-huh.
Um because I think there's ways that you can engage as a teenager with your parents versus ways you can engage with a boyfriend or girlfriend during a relationship.
Sure.
So I am super aware of how combative and hard-headed I can be, and it is something I'm very forward about. Like I think before I've gotten into any relationship in my life, I am very explicit about who I am, what I am like, and what things you would probably have to deal with in a relationship with me. And I give people the option very early on to like bow out and say like, this is something I can't handle because I know I can be the type of person that can be hard to handle. But now, like, but then when I'm like very far into a relationship, so like, you know, being in a long term relationship, when we have issues, I am actually I found out I'm very good at conflict resolution when it comes to relationships.
Okay.
Because I think it is the fact that I am so vocal about what my needs and wants are. When I feel like there is something that is bothering me, or there's something that I need in a relationship, or something that I don't like about a relationship, I will bring it up to the person and say like, "Hey, this thing is bothering me. Like, for this, and this reason. Can we discuss this and find ways that we can like resolve this issue?" So like, me and my boyfriend were like having issues with like communication when we were I think especially talking about like certain like heavy topics and stuff, like the way we would talk to each other would get a little bit like passive aggressive. And he felt like, and I brought it up to him where I was like, I feel like you're talking down to me. And he actually felt the same way, that he felt like, and so I think we knocked off each other a lot where we felt like we were talking down to each other.
Right.
And it aggravated the issue. So when I brought it up to him, he's like, I kind of feel the same way. So then from there, we actually like figured out better communication styles of like, how can we discuss things with each other without it getting to that place. And then like ever since then we've never had the issue because we realized like we just kind of sat down and said like, how, like, what can I do to be better, and like how can I change my language, or how can I change my tone that would make you feel like I'm not doing that to you, because neither of us were intending to make the other person feel that way, but we were both doing
Right.
it. So it was just one of those conversations where we like, what is it about the things I'm saying, what is it about my tone or whatever it is that makes you feel this way, and then like from there we were able to go forward really easily. So I'm very like, yeah, I think it is because I am very forward about my issues, and like I'm someone who's like very action oriented. So like as soon as there is an issue, it's like, what do we do to resolve this? Like what can I do to change my behavior? What can you do to change your behavior?
Which I was gonna say that's actually very mature, and like I feel like, because let's be honest, as teenagers, kids, when we start dating, we don't know all the fucking rules of dating. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't. A lot of people don't know, even know like, what green flags, red flags are, what is okay, what is not okay, boundaries, the whole thing. Some people need to learn that at a young age, growing up. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, did you ever date someone specifically because it irked anyone in your family? Now, I don't mean like date them like long term, just like brought them around or something, you know? No?
No, but I also didn't really date before this boyfriend because
Oh,
I did some hookups.
uh-huh.
But I was very against the idea of dating because I
Hmm.
knew I wasn't ready for it because of where my mental health was at, where I was in my life. I was like, I should not be in a relationship, and I was very aware of that. But even when I was like doing the dating apps and like, you know, hooking up or whatever, I haven't hooked up with that many people, but the ones that I did
Right.
have, it was one of those things where I was very, again, super forward with people of like, this is not going anywhere. If you want this to go somewhere, end it now before you get too attached, because this is not happening. I am not in that place where but I am super direct and forward. I'm a very direct and very forward person. And I know what my faults are, and I will explain them to you directly so that you don't find out later and feel like you've been duped.
Bamboozled.
Yeah, because I know what I am. I know who I am. I know what I'm like, and it's like if I can warn someone about it sounds like I'm insane, but if I can tell someone and like give them a heads up of like, if this is the type of like relationship you want, if this is the type of like, you know, care and love you need, and I can't provide that to you, then this isn't going to work out, and I don't want you wasting
Right.
time here. And it was the same thing with like people that I would like hook up with or go on dates with. It was like, yeah, I'm just like looking to have fun. I'm not looking to settle down or start anything.
Right.
But yeah, I take
Hmm.
it. I totally take it back. I
You're doing so
I
well.
was doing so well. I totally forgot. So I Didn't date the guy,
Hmm.
but I can't say this too loud because I hope no one in my house can hear me. I was like hooking up with a guy at work,
Uh-huh.
and I worked in a different department, but my dad was his boss. So it was something super taboo, and it was just one of those things we did because it was. And yeah,
I mean, it is what it is,
it is
right?
what it
It
is. It
is.
happens, and it's like I don't like, we're both just in that space, and it was just like, okay, like we're the only two young people at work, and the flirting
Risky,
started. Yeah,
taboo. Yeah.
my dad still doesn't know about that. My mom does.
Well, YouTube,
He never
if
finds us.
yeah.
It's okay. He barely knows I stream. It's fine. We're good. Don't worry about it.
Actually, that was gonna be my next question, which is, what do they think about you streaming and whatnot? Like, are they aware of it? Are they not?
Yeah, limited capacity kind of. Yeah, my mom knows a little bit more. My dad doesn't very much know anything, but it's also because I just didn't want it overlapping with a lot of my personal life anyway.
Mhm.
Like it was so funny because I had a TikTok before I started streaming, but I
Mhm.
never posted on it. But then I wanted to start using TikTok to like kind of promote stream stuff. So I actually blocked all of the people that I knew personally on my TikTok and just like took them all off because it wasn't that I like was embarrassed about it, but it just I mean, especially starting out, actually, I was a little embarrassed when I started, but it was also one of those things where I was like, this needs to be like very separate from my private life. And
Right.
because I also like don't want my Twitch channel kind of related to my real life, which is why I use like an alias and all that type of stuff. Like this, it's very separated.
I was gonna say that actually happened to me recently. A lot of
Oh,
the
really?
YouTube shorts and stuff that my mods have been pushing out there, or that have gone live, and even some of the videos. Some of my family's members have been like, "Hey, wait a minute, you're doing videos? Like, you're on Twitch. You're like, what is this out of context clip about you talking about taking a toilet pic and giving people like orange trees or fruit trees?" And I was like, guys, they're out of context clips. It was an
Hmm.
uncomfy conversation to have with
Yeah,
some of those people.
that's like the one thing is like I think if I ever get to the point that I'm big enough, like it was also one of those things I didn't tell either of my parents until I started making money. So when I actually got affiliate and I actually made like my first like little bit of money, I then like explained it. I was like, yeah, I'm just doing political content online. And I'm making money off of it. So it was one of those things where I'm like, if I can tell them I'm making money off of it, there's like a reason, a point to it kind of thing. Whereas like if
Uh-huh.
I felt like I needed like a justification because it is like again like Asian households, it's like one of those things like what the fuck are you doing, right? Like it's a little bit more like what the hell? Like I notice a lot of people that come on your stream like when they're like I don't mean to sound derogatory, but when like
Oh.
a lot of the white girls who come on your stream, like they'll be like, oh, like my parents are involved, or my parents also stream, and like, oh, I talk about this, and this with my parents, and it's like, I am very open with my parents for a brown person, but like, I was like, holy shit, I was like, yeah, I'm like my parents, I was like, I needed an excuse, and I was like, I'm making money off this. Now I can tell you, yeah,
I kept my shit so under wraps. I'll be straight up, right? Because like I kept everything so under wraps until the point where I started to at least like make a little bit of money on like Twitch, where like my parents were like, "Oh yeah, you're just talking with friends. You're just playing games with friends." I'm like,
yeah,
"That's exactly what I'm doing."
yep.
And then like all of a sudden they found out that I'm making money. And they're like, "Oh, you're doing group therapy," and I was like, "All right, guys, no, I'm not. I'm just talking with friends. Let's keep it that way."
It was I know because it was one of those things, especially when I started, where like because I wasn't telling anybody, but I had like I would be streaming and my mom would like come in to say goodnight, but I stream really late at night, so it was one of those things where it's like as soon as I heard the knock on the door, it was like close the camera, mute the stream, like all this type of stuff. I was like rapidly trying to turn everything off for like the 5 seconds. Now they usually know that
Oh,
like yeah, I think like now my mom knows like she doesn't come in like if she can hear me like chatting, that's probably why she doesn't come in. Um because she does know I stream and that like there's a camera and stuff like that, and I try to keep like again all my personal stuff like I don't want my parents and stuff being on camera unless they
right.
really wanted to, but again like I worry a little bit because of some of the more controversial stuff on my channel. And not that it's super controversial, it's still controversial. And this is my other problem is like, despite being a leftist, I still feel like my content is too controversial to be online. And that's a scary thing is like, even as someone who is actually pretty left leaning, because of like, I'm not left leaning enough, I still get that worry that like some of my stuff will have backlash, and it's why I keep it so far from my personal life. I keep it away from like my parents or like anybody who I know in real life. Like I don't try to show anyone's faces or say real names. Like, you know, I use an alias, all this type of stuff, because I think there always is that little bit of worry that it'll come back to bite you in the ass. So I was like,
Yeah.
if I can keep it like separated, that's like one of the big things is like, that's like, I think that's my only ever worry with streaming. Like there's nothing else that bothers me about streaming. Nothing scares me, but like the one thing is it something I say is going to come back to get me, and not because I don't stand by it. Like I stand by everything I say on my stream, but I also know
Right.
that like these things can have real world consequences, and that's terrifying. Which is also why I'm probably a little bit more careful with my stuff on stream than I would be in real life. Like when I talk to my friends, we're a lot more like, you know, bombastic and stupid. But like the things I say on stream, I try to like, I word my things a little bit more carefully.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One of my big things with that is also like afraid of, for example, especially as growing, afraid of being swatted. That's
Oh yeah.
probably yeah, that's probably one of like a big fear there, which is like some haters can really take it to that next level where all of a sudden like they're trying to find personal information or trying to like do
Hmm.
certain stuff. Because like at the moment, right, I live in my own little place, but I'm pretty sure like if someone were wanted to do like danger or something, they'd probably find all my old information where my parents are at. So more than likely it would give them a scare, you know? And it's
Hmm.
like, oh shit, like that's not.
Yeah.
Masters asked me. I mean, your dad watches Amaranth, right? Oh God,
Your dad
yeah. I
watches
found out
Amaranth?
my dad I saw him. He had the Twitch thing. I thought he was following me or something. Um, he follows a couple random streamers. He does. He just goes into the hot tub section, hot tub meta, and you're just like, what are you
That's
doing?
so funny.
And yeah, dude.
Oh my god. I don't know what I would do if I
ASMR.
caught my dad watching like Amaranth streams. I think I'd lose my mind. Like, you know, embrace your sexual, do whatever, but like, oh my god, I can't. No.
He was asking me how do you sub like to like some like random streamers, and I was like, Dad, I'm not gonna show you.
This is not what we're gambling our life savings away on, okay?
Yeah, I was like, mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
But dang, okay. So if there's one thing, how do simp? I wish I could sue. If there's one thing that you wish could change in the space, what do you think? What do you wish would change in either this space or like in Twitch in general? Since I know this is our main platform.
I think just being able to um have more nuanced discussions, because I think I've seen so many people that I like on Twitch get banned for really stupid reasons. And again, like I know it's like especially like in the politics sphere, it's so much easier because there is more controversial stuff coming up. But I wish like the people weren't so quick to like get really really upset and outraged over things, especially when people disagree. And I think it makes me sad more than anything that like we just can't have these conversations. Like I think like whenever, especially if you're working towards activism, you should be strong enough in like the things that you believe that like if someone says something against it, you should be able to argue back instead of like having to say like this person needs to be silenced. And I think that's like one of the biggest things is like Twitch is like really really big for that, of like if you disagree with someone and then they go and get your ship mass reported, like it's super easy to like get your ship, you know, banned or whatever.
Sure. And I'm about to ask you a hot take. You've been popping in on my streams lately, as you always do. You pop in at like the wrong times, right? And I kind of want to ask you because clearly, you know, every time that you pop in, there's always something sexual happening on screen, right? And I'm sure you've noticed that as well. And I'm kind of curious as to your take. Like, do you think the amount of like sexuality, especially when it comes to the way that they sexualize younger looking characters, it has an impact directly on, you know, some of the viewers or what viewers are labeling as okay or not? Or how do you feel whenever you see that pop up on stream?
Um, oh God. I
Yeah,
think I
we're going
trust
there.
you to cover that stuff because a lot of your content revolves around like having good like, you know, good practices within relationships. So I
Mm,
trust that when you're watching this stuff, like your community's also getting a lot of other information that's counteracting whatever narratives are being pushed in like these type of shows or these types of animes. Whereas like if I saw it in different communities, I think I'd have a very different view on it because it's like you're seeing some crazy shit that they're showing you and now they're laughing and joking about it. And like again, as much as it's individual responsibility of like people to like not be fucking morons, it's also
sure.
we know that like they're called people are called influencers because they are able to influence people. So if like you're showing content to your community and then not counterbalancing that with like any good information, and also kind of laughing and joking along with like this bad, like this like kind of racy content, it's like, damn, like I know there's gonna be some of your viewers that are probably internalizing this and being like, yeah, this is totally okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's like it depends on like the person and how they like show it and what they show, and like what else is also going on in those spaces.
That was very beautifully put. However, you did miss one thing.
But
I said I asked you how you felt, and you gave me this very beautiful answer in terms of like uh
I don't do feelings,
balancing the good
Ed.
and bad. But like I want a feeling. How do, like genuinely, like if you come in and you see some of those things, are you like, for example, oftentimes I'm quite shocked to see how often, right? I feel shocked, surprised, a little like whenever I see like especially younger looking characters being like extremely sexualized in media.
Yeah, I think it's like kind of like, damn, that's fucking weird and gross. But like for me, I more think of it
There you
like,
go.
who decided to like choose to create this content and why? Like, what is happening in that person's mind? Like, it doesn't
Mm,
necessarily instill a feeling in me, but instills like the thought of like, what led up to this being produced and this content being here? Because when I see it, I kind of laugh because I see it on your stream or Brady's stream, and it's like, okay, haha, lol, stupid
right,
shit on your guys' streams. I can laugh at it. But like,
right.
also when I look at that, I'm like, damn, someone actually had to go through the process of animating that and choosing to make like a 12-year-old looking character in a very like explicit position. It's just,
Yeah.
interesting about the human condition. You're not gonna
Well,
get a
no,
whole lot of feeling out of me, sorry, Ed.
I was about to say I sent you a wheel of
You
emotions.
said I couldn't use the wheel of emotions. I thought that
Wait,
was
what?
unallowed. Yeah. You said it when I'm talking to you, I'm not allowed to use it. Oops.
You feel free. I'll allow you,
Like,
guys. In case you guys didn't know, I actually did send Rex a wheel of emotions that labels all the core emotions that you can feel, just to help out a little bit.
yeah, because Ed gets really annoyed that I have no emotional complex at all.
No, I mean it's fine. You can have a logical based complex. It's just sometimes it's good to hear an emotion from time to time, you know?
I don't like that.
I know you don't like emotions. You already mentioned you're a machine before.
That was actually, you know what, going back to like the relationship questions you're asking earlier, that's probably
Sure.
like one of the hardest things is like navigating a more emotional bond with someone who is emotional and you being very not. Like I'm a very detached person. So like it is something that I have to manage way, way more than the average person probably.
Mm.
Like actually,
Being
yeah.
able to go.
Yeah, just being able to like empathize and emotionally engage with someone, because I think for me like I either have things like roll off my back, or like I'm someone who's like very like when I have issues it's like either I take care of it or I go to the people that I know can help me take care of it, or like whatever it is, like I'm just a very like um I don't know, I'm an active person in my life when it comes to
Sure.
things happen, and I feel like emotions can be very passive, and so I don't tend to engage with like my emotions as much as
So
probably an average person.
so does it drain you when you have to like meet someone emotionally?
It can. It can. Not necessarily always, like it doesn't always. Like I can someone can be emotional with me and it doesn't necessarily drain me, but to have a back and forth emotional engagement can sometimes be draining. Not always, sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because to me it sounds like you're very because you are very logical based. I know you. You're incredibly logical. You're the way you think. I do know that you do have some sort of emotions, and you mask them behind your words because you intellectualize a lot.
Yeah.
You're like super duper smart, and a lot of people will probably like get hit by your wall of intellectualization. And they'll be like, "Damn, Rex, you're so well spoken," and in that you share your emotions. Don't get me wrong, you do, but like in layman's terms, it's always like that's why I'm like I want to hear that I like or I feel or whatever, because I'm like I have to remind Rex that Rex is a human and not this like Robo Rex. Uh, but I wanted to ask you with that because clearly doing something like that, you can go through compassion fatigue. Like if someone's
Yeah.
always needy and always needs you to go ahead and like match their emotional vulnerability,
Yeah.
like do they come for you for their like logical support, or like does this exchange happen?
So, I I can do both. So I can be very emotionally supportive, but I'm also like I think I see the joke online all the time about like girls going to their boyfriends and being like he just wants to fix my problems, and like they always joke that like, oh, it's like guys don't know how to like talk about emotions. They just want to fix your problems, and girls will like joke about how annoying that is. And I think I'm on the other side of that, where I'm like, someone comes to me with like an emotional problem, and I will like empathize with you for like 5 minutes, but then I'm like, okay, so how are we going forward from here? What are you gonna do going forward? How are you gonna deal with this going forward? What's the plan? Because I think the thing that's draining to me is not someone coming to me with emotions. It's coming to me with the same issues over and over and over, or the same emotions over and over and over. And it's like, if you can't regulate, that can get really draining for me, because I think I regulate my emotions really well, because I do have emotions, but I'm very, very well regulated.
Yeah.
So when I'm with someone who's not, and I haven't been with anyone who's super unregulated. Well, I've like had friends and stuff who are super unregulated, but I've never been in a close, intimate relationship with someone who's unregulated. But I know that's something that super bugged the fuck out of me, was like, I get super drained talking to people who are that unregulated.
I was gonna say, so we're not gonna see Rex the therapist in the future, are we? I.e., you're unregulated. Like, start fixing your old shit.
No, I
What's the
think that's
next
why I'm
step?
like in the criminal justice field, because for me it's like, you're like, I want to work with like youth offenders, so there's some part of
Mhm.
that is like the therapist emotional part. But for me, I want to work in the sector that like helps these people get help, like help them, get on better paths. Like, what can we do? How can we help you get into better life paths? And
Right.
so, because I'm a very like, hands-on, get these people like the actual like supports that they need. And so for me, that's yeah, that's much more like my realm of like, I think. And it's funny because I've been told most of my life that I'm a very good therapist, and I don't know why, but I think it might be the way that I talk to people.
Sure.
And whereas like you see me on stream, I'm very like more stoic, but I think I can be with people who I really care about, who I'm emotionally close to. I can be a little bit more. Um, I don't know, like I don't know if empathetic's the word. Like I'm,
Mhm. Like,
but yeah,
vulnerable.
I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's like more like, because I know that person, I can
Mhm.
I can kind of see into, or that sounds super weird to be able to see into somebody's mind. But I think once you know a person long enough, like you can kind of like understand where they're coming from, and at that point I can kind of be like, I understand your issues and like what you're going through, so like I can be your friend to lean on, but also I think my friends also know me enough to know that like I am probably going to be a solution person, so when they get to the point that they want solutions, that's probably the point that they come to me.
I mean, fair. Yeah, because seeing the way that you're able to go out and like, because you can be there for your friends, but at the same time, if you're able to have an outside perspective looking in, you probably have an easier time to
Hmm.
find the solutions.
Yeah.
All right, chat. I'm gonna ask you guys for two final questions. Could be personal or it could be open questions. Whatever you guys want to go ahead and ask either Rex or myself. Feel free. Go ham. Masters, are you sure you want me to ask that one? Because I could. I'll use this as a leeway so that they can have some time.
Yeah.
Do you follow Indian politics and what do you think of them?
I used to follow them a little bit closer, not so much anymore, just because there's so much to follow all the time. Um, I think when the last election happened, I was looking at stuff a little bit more closely to see what like the way it was leaning. I
Mhm.
think the stuff that's been happening in Pakistan lately, I've followed a little bit more, but it's not. I haven't followed a whole like a lot in depth of these things, just because it's like, as much as I'd love to like follow Indian politics more, a lot of the systems are super corrupt at this point that it's like, fuck, it's so hard to analyze because everything is so corrupt there. But also, it's like, I live in Canada and I live in America, and like this is the places that affect me more. So I tend to focus on those things more, a little bit more than anything else.
Fair. Sagusu asks, "What's her favorite movie?"
Lord of the Rings, easy. The franchise. I Every year on my birthday, I do a whole marathon. I watch Lord of the Rings all over again, the extended editions and all.
I'll be honest, Sagusu. I really like to just take in Space Odyssey. You know, just really, just take it in. If just get high, drink a
Oh,
little bit.
okay. Now one
Um,
second. Yeah.
that tends to be my favorite go-to. It's either that or for some reason, fuck, I forgot the name of the movie.
Okay, that time she actually did walk in.
Oh, but yeah, no, I really like any good Odyssey movie tends to be really really good. The mom did come in to say good night. Oh,
Yes. Oh.
and I guess from your side is how are you feeling?
Oh yeah, I'm okay. Just super stressed out with all my school stuff right now because I've got like two like really hard weeks ahead of me, and so I should be working right now. But I decided to take a break to do the interview because I was like, it's probably a good thing to do.
Yeah,
Also, he said, "How do I look so good all the time?" And it's all lighting, and I uh do my lips before stream because my lips are very pale, so I put on a little bit of lipstick before I start streaming so that I don't look super
what are
washed
you
out.
talking about, dude? Like, no matter any time that you've come on, you've always looked good. And it wasn't even like you were ready for stream. Like, it was just like a moment that you just came on, you were like there. Like, you're always looking good. No worries. Like, you're like, I do my lips still before I even like jump on.
I just put a little like either like a yeah like some type of like lip tint or something just so that my lips because like
Right.
I have very pale lips like I just get like super washed out. Um, I like I won't say I'm not good looking. I think I am. I always joke that I used to have a very low self esteem and if I could give everyone like one tip of advice that has worked for me so much in my life, I was a super non confident kid. I was had such low self esteem and I did the whole fake it till you make it thing, and it is actually like the best thing I ever did because like you fake being cocky for so long that it eventually just turns real, and you forget that you're faking it. And now I'm like, I'm probably a really like I'm a really confident person in my everyday life. I I think I look good. I think I think I'm smart. Like I know who I am, but I'm also very like confident about who I am. I know my flaws.
Right.
I'm not perfect. Um, but it was one of those things where it was like I just faked being confident for so long that eventually was like I don't think I'm faking anymore.
You're like, I think I am. All right. I
Yeah.
guess my final question for you is, um, what are your plans for future? Like, what are you planning on covering in the future? Not like think about this like months in advance, or like, like what are you planning on like growing, or what do you plan on doing? And any final messages for those people that do want to come and check you out?
I want to do more philosophy stuff. I was supposed to do it a few months ago,
Mhm.
but this semester of schooling ended up being a lot more intense than I thought it was going to be. So I didn't end up actually doing like I had this whole philosophy stream planned. It was going to be a once a week thing where I brought people on from the community to talk about philosophy and talk about like philosophy like I would send out like actual like excerpts from philosophy books or philosophy passages, and then everyone like kind of have a week to analyze the stuff and like come on and discuss. That is something I still want to do in the future. It's probably not going to be until my last semester of school when I'm taking less classes, but my next semester is also very tough, so I do want to do more philosophy stuff going forward. I just want to get on a better streaming schedule as well, but it's also again one of those things with schooling. It's really hard. So I think once I graduate and I'm working a job and I have a set schedule, I think I'll probably be in a much better place to stream more often and more on schedule. So I don't know. I hope to do more with my content in the future.
It's awesome. And where can people find you?
At Rex73 underscore on Twitch, on TikTok, where I'm just gonna start posting more, and on Twitter. And I have a
Are you gonna
Discord.
make Are you gonna make a YouTube?
I have a YouTube channel. All my VODs get uploaded there, but they're privated right now because I have to kind of go through and pick which ones that I need to public. But I do actually have a YouTube. It's linked down below. You can subscribe, and I'm going to start actually publishing my videos probably this week or next week. Because I've literally every VOD I think since I started streaming, except for maybe the first like 5 or 6, almost every single VOD I think is actually on that channel though. I have just like I export them straight from Twitch. After like a week, I export my all my VODs to Twitch or to YouTube, so they're actually like they're all there on my channel, but they're just privated.
Yo, but that's awesome. That's awesome. That's getting ahead of the game. That way
Yeah,
you're able to like look back and pick what you want
yeah.
and go from there. But guys, honestly, I can't recommend Rex enough for especially for those of you on like YouTube. Uh, she is one of many to come, especially with Brady, because we got to do the whole Brady one as well and others um, of like interviews, and you guys get to know them a little bit more. And I will have Rex back. I hope you know this is just to like go ahead and give you guys a little like taster of like who Rex is as an individual and. My debate coach,
I'm
number
here
one
like once a
person
week,
here.
guys. You'll see me on Ed stream all the time. I,
Yeah, right.
I insert myself all the time.
That's what I'm saying. Like you're amazing. You know that our community loves you. But I'm putting this out there so that way YouTube can come and follow you and give you that support. But yeah, alrighty. Practice some self care, and we'll see YouTube guys later. How you feeling? You doing good? You're about to dip.
Yeah, I
Gotta go
think I'm gonna
back
end
to
my
home.
stream here too because I got other stuff to do tonight. But I will also say goodbye to my chat and whoever's still here hanging out. But I will hopefully be streaming more, probably not next week at all, but the week after I will definitely be streaming a lot more because my semester finishes on December 7th, and then I will be streaming all the time as much as I can. So whoever enjoys my content, just give it a week and I'll be on here a lot more.
All right, appreciate you, Rex. Have a good night.
Good
Be
night,
safe.
guys. Also, thank you for the follow, Gross News. Thank you. Bye, guys.